A forest after rain smells like life itself. The air is heavy, silent, thick with moisture. And something else. Something you can't quite name but feel in every breath. Everything seems to be asleep. Trees stand still, leaves slowly dry, birds have gone quiet. But beneath the ground, just a few inches under your feet, there is movement you cannot see. An invisible organism wraps around roots, seeps through stones, weaving a web of life. A network so vast it holds the entire forest together. This is mycelium, the hidden brain of nature, managing the world for millions of years without ever being chosen to rule. Fungi are the silent rulers of the planet. They have no eyes, no mouths, no hearts, yet they understand balance better than any other form of life. They turn death into life, leaves into soil, wood into decay, and decay into forest. They are biological alchemists, the invisible link between what breathes and what has stopped. And most importantly, without them, nothing we call alive would exist. Fungi were here before the first trees appeared. They helped them grow when their roots were still learning to hold the barren earth. And though it may seem that forests give life to fungi, in truth, it's the fungi that keep the forest alive. They carry information, distribute nutrients, regulate oxygen and carbon, and when something dies, they transform it into a new beginning. They are the oldest engineers of nature, the hidden operating system of Earth. They don't need light. They don't crave attention. They live in shadow, in silence, in symbiosis with every breath the planet takes. And for thousands of years, we've walked over them, unaware that beneath our steps lies the greatest living network on Earth. But fungi also have another face, one that fascinates and unsettles. They are both medicine and poison, food and hallucinogen, a bridge between the worlds of humans and plants, of life and death. In one particle of their body lies the power to heal and to kill. And perhaps that's why, even though they've always been with us, we still feel a certain reverence toward them. Because fungi belong neither to the world of plants nor to that of animals. They are something in between, a quiet, ancient presence that binds together everything that lives. Before the first tree rose on Earth, before the ground was covered in green, the planet was a desert of stone and dust. The air was thick with carbon dioxide. The sky glowed red with storms, and the sun burned like a blade cutting through anything that tried to live. But even then, something was growing. Not upward, like the trees that would come much later, but downward. In the cracks of rocks, in the moisture between grains of sand, a silent pioneer appeared. Fungus. It needed no leaves or sunlight, only fragments of matter and time, and it had plenty of both. Fungi are among the oldest multicellular organisms on Earth. Their history stretches back over 1 billion years, to a time when life was just learning to breathe. Long before plants existed, fungi were already decomposing organic matter, remnants of cyanobacteria, microorganisms, and early algae. In a way, they prepared Earth for life itself. They broke down rocks, released minerals, and transformed dead matter into fertile soil. By the time the first plants emerged from the oceans, the land was ready, thanks to them. The oldest known fossilized fungus, Urasphira giraldae, dates back over 1 billion years and looked like a microscopic brush. At that time, it was the only architect of land-based life. For millions of years after, fungi formed partnerships with primitive plants, creating what we now call mycorrhiza, a symbiosis where both sides benefit. The plant gives the fungus sugars produced through photosynthesis, while the fungus provides minerals, water, and protection. This alliance has lasted until today. In fact, every plant you see, every blade of grass, shrub, and tree, has its invisible fungal partner beneath the ground. Fungi didn't just help plants survive, they decided what life on Earth would look like. Before there were soil bacteria or earthworms, fungi were the ones breaking down the dead and turning it into the raw material for new life. Thanks to them, the cycle could close. Birth, death, decay, rebirth. Some paleobiologists believe that early fungi may have even helped shape the planet's climate. Their enzymes bound minerals in rocks that absorbed carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, lowering its levels and cooling the planet. In that way, microscopic organisms determined the fate of Earth itself, and the fungi kept growing. In the shadows, in soil, in rotting wood, in the bodies of animals. They survived every cataclysm, every era. When the dinosaurs vanished, the fungi simply continued their work. Silent, steady, eternal. Today, scientists have discovered that genetically, fungi are closer to humans than to plants. They breathe oxygen, exhale carbon dioxide, digest, and produce enzymes and hormones similar to ours. If you look into their DNA, you'll find we share a common ancestor, a being that lived long before forests existed. Maybe that's why they fill us with both awe and unease. Because fungi aren't part of the plant world. They are its shadow. They live in half-light, feeding on what has died, but they do it with precision. They understand the balance between life and death better than we ever could. Their world is hidden, but without it, our world would have no roots. Beneath the surface of the earth, under grass and roots, under every step we take, stretches an invisible world. If you could lift the soil like a transparent veil, you'd see a network of infinite complexity, a delicate, white, fibrous web. This is mycelium, the true body of the fungus. The mushroom we see above ground is merely its brief bloom. Mycelium is the planet's underground internet, connecting trees, shrubs, grasses, and microorganisms into one living system. Each thread of this network, called a hypha, is thinner than 1,000th of a millimeter, yet can extend for miles. In North American forests, scientists have found the mycelium of a single Armillaria ostoyi, stretching across over 900 hectares and thousands of years old. It is the largest organism on Earth, bigger than any animal or tree, living quietly in the darkness of the soil. But size isn't everything. Mycelium functions like a neural network. Scientists have discovered that electrical impulses flow through it, remarkably similar to those in the human brain. When one part of the network encounters toxins, drought, or new food sources, the signal spreads instantly. The rest of the organism responds, slowing growth in one direction, speeding it up in another, strengthening connections. The fungus has no nerves, yet behaves as if it understands. Most extraordinary of all, fungi communicate with plants. Their filaments penetrate tree roots, forming mycorrhiza, a microscopic alliance. Through it, trees can share information and resources with one another. If one tree is attacked by insects, within minutes, a warning signal travels through the fungal network. Other trees immediately increase their production of defensive compounds, as if they had received a message. Danger ahead. Scientists call this phenomenon the Wood Wide Web, the forest's internet. In this system, older trees, known as mother trees, send nutrients to younger saplings growing in the shade. Fungi mediate the exchange, managing the flow of energy and matter like quiet administrators of nature. Some researchers go even further, suggesting that mycelium possesses a primitive form of distributed consciousness, not in the sense of emotion, but in the ability to decide and adapt in response to stimuli. When mycelium encounters an obstacle, it knows how to move around it. When it finds a new area rich in nutrients, it expands rapidly. Its behavior resembles that of a swarm of bees, an anthill, even a brain. What's more, studies have shown that the electrical impulses within mycelium form patterns that resemble words and sentences different. Fungal species appear to have vocabularies of up to 50 distinct signal units. Some researchers compare this to a primitive language of nature. Perhaps that's an exaggeration, but one thing is certain. Fungi exchange information, and their world is not chaos but a complex system of communication. Humanity is only beginning to understand how powerful this hidden organism truly is. Mycelium can influence the climate, lock carbon into soil, and even heal, not just the earth, but us as well. The fibrous threads of mycelium are already being used to make medicines, biodegradable materials, and even artificial leather. But the greatest potential of fungi still lies in their natural intelligence, in their ability to learn, adapt, and maintain balance within ecosystems without leaders, without a center, without ego. When you stand in a forest and feel that something surrounds you, Something pulses beneath your feet, something watches. It's no illusion. Beneath you flows the mind of the planet, and its circuitry is woven from mycelium, silent, wise, eternal. When a fungus decides to reveal itself to the world, it does so in a way that has always seemed magical to humans. Suddenly after rain, in a spot where there was only moss and soil the day before, something alien emerges, soft, damp, glistening with dew. It looks as if the earth itself has taken a deep breath. This is the fruiting body, the brief visible form of a vast hidden organism beneath the ground. It's the fungus's flower, though its logic of life is entirely different from that of plants. For most of its existence, the mycelium remains hidden. It gathers nutrients from decaying matter, waiting for a signal. The right temperature, humidity, pressure, sometimes even the right phase of the moon. Only then does it send upward delicate threads that fuse into tissue, forming a stem, a cap, and within it, something even more extraordinary. Millions of microscopic spores, the seeds of the fungus. These are the true purpose of its effort. The fruiting body lives briefly, sometimes only a day or two, but in that time it can release trillions of spores, drifting through the air like invisible rain of life. Fungal spores are among the toughest biological structures on Earth. They can survive freezing, drought, even journeys through outer space. In one experiment, spores placed outside the International Space Station remained alive after months of exposure to radiation and vacuum. That's why fungi are considered among the first potential colonizers of new worlds. If humans ever attempt to terraform other planets, it might be fungi that first prepare the soil for life. The way the fruiting body spreads its spores is a true biological performance. Some fungi shoot them out with the force of a microscopic catapult. Others, like the foul-smelling stinkhorn, lure flies with the scent of decay to carry spores away on their legs. Still others, like puffballs, explode under the touch of a raindrop or an animal's paw, releasing a cloud of dust into the air. Every fungus has its own way of living, its own survival strategy, its own role in the world. What for us is recreation, mushroom hunting, is, for the fungus, an act of continuation. We take the caps, unaware that most of its life remains below the surface, and that hidden part keeps learning, connecting, growing, regenerating. When you look at a mushroom rising from moss, you're seeing only the tip of a story. The fungus doesn't live to be beautiful or to feed us. It plays a role in a much larger plan. It's a connector, a recycler, an architect of life and death cycles. Its fruiting body is simply a signal. I am here. The earth breathes. The fungus is an invisible partner in evolution. For millions of years, it has lived alongside animals, sometimes helping them survive, sometimes using them in remarkable ways. In the Amazon, there are ants that march in perfect lines carrying pieces of leaves. But the leaves aren't for them. They're for their fungus. These leafcutter ants have been cultivating fungi in underground gardens for more than 50 million years. What humans see as the height of agriculture, ants mastered long before we existed. They feed their fungus with chopped leaves and in return eat its threads, a perfect protein-rich food. It's not parasitism but mutualism. The ants can't live without the fungus, and the fungus can't survive without the ants. A similar partnership exists with African termites. In their monumental mounds, which can rise several meters high, they cultivate a special fungus, Termitomyces. It breaks down the wood they bring inside, making it digestible. That's why termite mounds are so alive. Inside, the climate is stable, and the whole colony functions like a single organism, with the fungus as its stomach. But fungi can also be masters of manipulation. Some turn animals into puppets. The most famous example is Ophiocordyceps, the parasitic fungus that infects ants. A spore attaches to an ant, grows through its body, and ultimately reaches its brain. The infected ant, instead of returning to the colony, climbs a leaf, bites it, and dies, precisely where humidity and temperature are ideal for fungal growth. From its head emerges a thin stalk, the fruiting body, releasing spores onto other ants. It's macabre, yet evolutionarily perfect. Other animals, however, use fungi as allies, not victims. Deer, boars, bears, and squirrels eat them not only for food, but because certain species contain compounds that detoxify or boost immunity. Animals have been observed instinctively choosing specific fungi when they're ill, as if they knew their medicinal properties. Squirrels, burying mushrooms for the winter, help fungi reproduce. Their forgotten caches spread spores across the forest. Some fungi go even further, producing aromas and flavors that act like magnets. Truffles, the most prized fungi on Earth, emit a scent so powerful that pigs and dogs can detect them from dozens of meters away. That aroma, as it turns out, contains compounds similar to male pig pheromones. The fungus hijacked an ancient instinct to ensure it would be dug up and spread. Even in the oceans, fungi exist. Invisible, microscopic, working with corals, fish, and plankton. They decompose organic matter and sustain the nutrient cycle. Without them, the seas would turn into graveyards of decay. The symbiosis between fungi and animals is a dialogue of nature that has lasted for millions of years. Some live off each other, some die because of it. But the balance remains. What we call parasitism is, in a broader view, simply part of the cycle. Fungi teach us that in nature, nothing is purely good or bad, only interconnected. Every species, from the smallest ant to the largest mammal, is woven into the same web, held together by the threads of mycelium. And perhaps fungi are nature's greatest reminder that everything alive exists only because it shares itself with others. Fungi have been with humans since before we could write. Archaeologists have found traces of medicinal molds in the tombs of pharaohs. Not by accident, but carefully placed. In Tibet and China, fungal remedies date back to the 4th millennium BCE, and in Mesopotamia they were used to disinfect wounds and preserve food. No one then knew the word bacteria, but people understood that fungi prevent decay. It was intuitive biology, and thousands of years later, Fleming gave it a name: penicillin. On one hand, fungi are the quiet heroes of medicine. Their biochemistry is a treasury of compounds with immense therapeutic potential. From some species, we derive cyclosporin, the drug that revolutionized transplantation by allowing humans to accept foreign organs. Others give us statins, which lower cholesterol, and Taxol, used to treat breast and ovarian cancer. Every one of these medicines comes from a fungus, a life form once dismissed as a biological curiosity. But fungi aren't just emergency medicine. They're also our everyday partners in food production. Fermentation, discovered thousands of years ago, is nothing more than the labor of fungi. Yeasts, Saccharomyces cerevisiae, have turned sugars into alcohol since time immemorial, giving humanity its 3 cultural pillars: bread, beer, and wine. To the ancient Egyptians, fermentation was a divine gift, though in truth, it was the quiet miracle of microscopic fungi. If medicine changed how we live, cuisine made fungi part of who we are. And nothing shows that better than mold-ripened cheeses, subtle, complex, and slightly daring masterpieces of microbiology. It may seem strange that humans chose to eat something covered in mold. Yet this controlled decay became one of the most refined expressions of culinary courage. Fungi of the genus Penicillium, the same ones that later gave us penicillin, don't just give cheese flavor, they give it character. When it comes to blue-veined cheeses such as Roquefort, Gorgonzola, or Stilton, they owe their striking marbled texture and sharp, tangy aroma to Penicillium roqueforti. To allow the mold to grow, cheesemakers pierce the curds with fine needles, letting oxygen seep in, creating, inside each wheel, a miniature city of living mold. In cheeses ripened with white mold, like Camembert or Brie, the ruler is Penicillium camemberti. Unlike its blue cousin, this fungus doesn't burrow deep into the cheese, but forms a delicate, chalky white rind on its surface. That soft bloom is what gives these cheeses their nutty flavor and creamy, almost buttery interior. The process is so finely tuned that even a small shift in temperature humidity, or airflow can completely change the aroma and texture of the final cheese. In truth, a maturing cheese is a living ecosystem. Fungi don't work alone. They cooperate with lactic acid bacteria and yeasts to create a microscopic world where dozens of biochemical reactions unfold. That's why no two cheeses ever taste exactly the same, even when made from the same milk. The mold in cheese doesn't only create flavor, it also protects. The natural antibiotics it produces suppress spoilage organisms and harmful bacteria, allowing the cheese to age slowly and safely. In that sense, the fungus doesn't just make the cheese, it guards it, acting as a silent custodian of biological balance. It's remarkable that instead of fighting mold, humans learned to collaborate with it in one of the most delicate arts of all, the art of taste. Every piece of Roquefort tells a story of trust. For something covered in mold to become a delicacy, humanity first had to overcome instinctive fear and learn to understand the process rather than destroy it. In Asia, another species, Aspergillus oryzae, was domesticated to create soy sauce, miso, and sake. In Japan, it's so revered it has its own name and the title of national microorganism. The fact that its fermentation process has remained almost unchanged for thousands of years shows just how stable and dependable human fungus relationships can be when based on cooperation, not control. Modern biotechnology has taken that partnership to a new level. In laboratories, fungi are now used to produce industrial enzymes, vitamins, hormones, and organic acids. Thanks to them, we can create insulin through fermentation and even turn agricultural waste into bioplastic. In the cosmetics industry, fungi provide kojic acid, a natural skin lightening agent, and hyaluronic acid, essential for hydration and regeneration. What once seemed like a passing beauty trend is now the fruit of decades of research into mycological pharmacology. The role of fungi in agriculture is equally vital. Through mycorrhizal symbiosis, they help plants grow stronger roots, retain water, and resist disease. Today, entire biological formulas harness fungi to reduce chemical fertilizers and protect soil health, an ancient mechanism of nature reborn as modern farming. Innovation. But perhaps the most fascinating chapter is the newest one. Fungi as the material of the future. Under the right conditions, their mycelium forms a structure that's tough like cork yet light as felt. From it, people now craft furniture, fabrics, packaging, and even bricks that, when discarded, simply decompose. Across the world, companies are already producing shoes, handbags, and even guitars from a mycelium-based material known as mylo. In this way, fungi return to their original purpose, not just as food, but as tools for survival. Only this time, not for the forest, but for humanity in an age of ecological crisis. Humans have learned to use fungi as a form of living, intelligent technology. They need no factories, no smoke, only moisture, a bit of light, and organic matter to create what we manufacture through toxic processes. This quiet partnership, once hidden beneath the soil, is becoming the foundation of a new civilization. For if fungi once helped us survive disease and discover bread, today they help us survive our own technological arrogance. They're still doing what they've always done, restoring balance. Fungi aren't just the physicians and chefs of our world, they're also its architects of ecology. Silent cleaners and natural alchemists, able to transform matter that no other organism can digest. Some specialize in breaking down substances so complex they'd otherwise linger for centuries. The white rot fungus Phanerocate chrysosporium, sometimes called the industrial fungus, can decompose lignin, a tough compound found in wood and leaves. Thanks to it, forests recycle their dead matter instead of choking on it, returning nutrients to the soil. Even more astonishing is fungi's effect on synthetic waste. Research shows that some species, like Pleurotus austriatus, the oyster mushroom, can digest polyethylene and polyurethane plastics. The enzymes they release break plastics into simpler organic compounds that soil microbes can then absorb, a discovery that could transform the global fight against pollution. Other species are even more specialized. Aspergillus tubangensis can break down plastic in laboratory conditions within weeks, a process that would otherwise take nature centuries. Another, Fomitopsis pinicola, is capable of degrading PCBs, the toxic industrial chemicals that still linger in soil long after factories have disappeared. Fungi also act as purifiers of water and soil. Some species can bind heavy metals like cadmium, lead, or mercury, reducing their toxicity in the environment. In tropical forests, fungi and their networks of hyphae play a crucial role in nutrient cycling, transporting nitrogen, phosphorus, and other essential elements between plants and soil, almost like living filters of the ecosystem. We must also consider fungi's role in combating erosion and desertification. Mycelium stabilizes the soil, wraps around plant roots, increases water retention, and supports vegetation growth in areas where the soil would otherwise be too poor or dry for anything to survive. Looking at these examples, it becomes clear that fungi are not just participants in the cycle of life and death. They are active guardians of balance. They help nature survive humanity by detoxifying toxins, recycling waste, and maintaining the vitality of forests and soils. One could say that in the natural world, fungi serve as invisible ecological engineers, whose wisdom surpasses anything humans have yet devised. The fungal world is full of surprises that humans are only beginning to understand. Some species appear almost fantastical, as if nature were experimenting with the limits of biology. Take, for example, hallucinogenic mushrooms like Psilocybe cubensis or Psilocybe semilanceata. They contain psilocybin, a chemical that affects the brain, altering perception of time, space, and color, and sometimes inducing profound spiritual experiences. Indigenous cultures in Central America use them in religious rituals, believing that mushrooms allowed contact with higher powers or the spirit world. Modern science confirms that psilocybin can be used therapeutically to treat depression or anxiety, opening doors to experimental psychiatric medicine. Another extraordinary example is parasitic fungi that manipulate animal behavior. Cordyceps attacks insects, growing through their bodies and controlling their movements to ensure spore dispersal. Less well-known fungi influence larger animals as well. Some soil molds release chemicals that attract rodents or insects, and ingestion increases the fungus's chances of spreading, subtly manipulating the prey's instincts. There are also fungi that fascinate scientists with their ability to produce unique chemical compounds. Claviceps purpurea, or ergot, infects cereal grains and produces alkaloids that are toxic to humans, but have also been a source of drugs regulating blood pressure and treating migraines. A perfect example of a fungus that can both harm and heal. Nature in its purest paradox. Some fungi are true ecosystem engineers, creating structures that alter their environment. Mycena chlorophyos, a bioluminescent mushroom, glows in tropical forests. Its light attracts insects that carry its spores further, while simultaneously creating a spectacle that draws researchers and photographers from around the world. Another example is Armillaria ostoyae, so massive that its underground mycelial network in Oregon spans dozens of hectares, making it one of the largest living organisms on Earth. It has survived for thousands of years, and its spreading hyphae slowly change the composition of the forest, reshaping entire ecosystems. Fungi can also affect the human mind in subtle ways through aromas and volatile compounds. Some species emit scents reminiscent of vanilla, anise, or even strawberries, attracting animals or humans. These chemical signals can influence perception, making certain forests almost hypnotic in their fragrance, while in labs, the same compounds are studied for perfumery or sensory therapy applications. What sets these extraordinary fungi apart is their ability to operate on multiple levels simultaneously: biological, chemical, ecological, and psychological. They are invisible teachers of nature, showing that the boundaries of life are fluid, and that microscopic organisms harbor strategies capable of influencing animals, humans, entire forests, and even human consciousness. For centuries, fungi have held an ambiguous position for humans. They could heal, feed, and inspire, yet simultaneously kill, poison, or induce hallucinations. once considered contact with spirits or demons. Some species are so toxic that just a few grams can kill an adult human. The fly agaric, Amanita muscaria, though now associated with fairy tales and holiday imagery, was once used as a ritual drug in northern Eurasian cultures. Consumption could cause vomiting, hallucinations, and potentially death, as it affects the nervous system, distorting perception and coordination. Even more dangerous is the death cap, Amanita phalloides. One of the deadliest mushrooms in the world, its toxins attack the liver and kidneys. Symptoms often appear hours after ingestion, leaving the victim unaware of the danger. Historical records indicate that death caps were sometimes used for political assassinations and remain the greatest threat to amateur mushroom hunters today. There are also fungi that manipulate animals and occasionally engage in indirectly dangerous interactions with humans. Parasitic species, like the aforementioned Ophiocordyceps, can infect insects, while other molds produce toxins in food. For example, Aspergillus flavus, which generates aflatoxins in nuts, corn, or rice. These compounds are highly carcinogenic and pose serious health risks, especially in regions with limited food safety controls. Hallucinogenic fungi cannot be overlooked either. In the 20th century, they became a focus of psychedelic research. Species of psilocybe can induce profound psychological experiences, sometimes positive, sometimes causing fear, panic, or disorientation. Historical evidence shows they were used in ancient rituals, but improper dosing could lead to accidents or death. Some fungi exhibit the ability to toxically colonize their environment. Claviceps purpurea, ergot, caused the so-called St. Anthony's fire in medieval Europe. Consumption of contaminated bread led to hallucinations, convulsions, and in extreme cases, the deaths of thousands. Fungi were thus not merely random poisons. They influenced human history, triggering epidemics that shaped societies. Although these aspects are terrifying, they also demonstrate the remarkable power of fungi. They can affect the nervous system, physiology, and behavior of humans, making them objects of both fear and scientific study. Modern mycology, toxicology, and pharmacology teach how to distinguish beneficial fungi from dangerous ones, while also exploring their applications in medicine, psychology, and healthcare. This dark side of fungi reminds us that nature is neither friendly nor hostile. It is a realm where life and death coexist, and humans must learn balance. Fungi are masters of subtle control. They not only create ecosystems, but also test our understanding of the world, showing that even the smallest organism can influence life, health, and sometimes the course of history. On one hand, fungi exhibit remarkable adaptive abilities. Their extensive network of hyphae, mycelium, can penetrate various substrates, survive drought, extreme temperatures, and some species can even break down unusual substances such as plastic or industrial chemicals. This makes them capable of rebuilding populations after natural disasters in ecosystems, such as forest fires or floods. Their ability to produce spores, which can survive months or even years under unfavorable conditions, is another key adaptive feature. However, human activity has a significant impact on the balance of fungi in nature. Intensive urbanization, deforestation, and the use of pesticides and chemical fertilizers alter soil structure, moisture levels, and the composition of microorganisms that coexist with fungi. Specialized species that rely on certain types of trees or soil conditions often disappear, taking entire mycorrhizal networks with them. In forests managed as monocultures, fungal species richness can drop by as much as half compared to natural primary forests. Air and soil pollution also affect fungi. Heavy metals, excess nitrogen from fertilizers, and industrial pollutants can slow mycelial growth or reduce spore production. Some species are more resilient. Urban molds, for example, can survive in contaminated environments, but others, particularly rare or specialized species, face extinction. Interestingly, fungi can sometimes adapt to new conditions, but adaptation does not always mean survival in their original form. Instead of rich, complex ecosystems, simplified communities of pollution-tolerant fungi emerge. reducing biodiversity and weakening ecological functions such as soil reinforcement and plant cooperation. In short, fungi have extraordinary adaptive abilities, but they are not indestructible. Excessive human intervention, deforestation, chemical usage, urbanization, and climate change can dramatically reduce their populations, alter species composition, and disrupt ecosystems that depend on fungi. Nature provides them with tools to survive, but we decide how effectively they can use them. Fungi not only play a role in ecological cycles, but also respond immediately to environmental changes, making them highly sensitive indicators of ecosystem health. Their presence, species diversity, and mycelial condition can reveal more to scientists than dozens of chemical analyses. In primary forests, the richness of mycorrhizal fungi is enormous. Over 80% of trees cooperate with mycelium, and any changes in soil, moisture, or salinity are instantly reflected in the structure of these fungal communities. Some species are particularly sensitive to pollution. For example, terrestrial fungi, such as Lacaria and Russula, disappear in soils with high concentrations of heavy metals or nitrogen, which degrades soil quality and weakens nutrient cycling. The presence of lichens like Cladonia or Evernia, which grow on bark and rocks, signals clean air, whereas their absence in cities indicates high levels of atmospheric pollution. Fungi also respond to climate change. Species specialized for cold, moist mountain forests disappear quickly as temperatures rise, replaced by more drought-tolerant species, which changes the local ecosystem. Researchers can track climate shifts in real time by observing changes in fungal populations. Some fungi also help assess soil chemical contamination. Molds of Aspergillus and Penicillium are sensitive to pesticides, and their decline in crops can signal toxic chemical buildup. Special fungal-based laboratory tests are even used to detect heavy metals, radioactive isotopes, and other harmful substances, natural sensors of the environment. Parasitic and saprotrophic fungi, those that decompose dead organic matter, also indicate forest health. In primary forests with diverse natural tree cover, hundreds of wood-decomposing fungal species can exist per hectare. In monocultures or degraded forests, these numbers drop sharply, providing one of the clearest indicators of biodiversity loss. Fungi are indispensable in ecosystems, and their absence would have catastrophic consequences for human life. Although they may seem like microscopic organisms or occasionally tasty food additives, their biological and ecological functions are foundational to our civilization. Firstly, fungi play a crucial role in nutrient cycling. They decompose dead organic matter, releasing nitrogen, phosphorus, and carbon, which then become available to plants. Without fungi, leaves, wood, and plant debris would accumulate on the ground. Soils would become impoverished, and photosynthesizing plants, and ultimately humans, would lose access to food and oxygen at the levels we depend on. Mycorrhizal fungi, which cooperate with the roots of most plants, are essential for plant productivity. Without them, many trees and crops could not extract sufficient water and minerals from the soil, leading to dramatic declines in agricultural and forestry yields. From grains, fruits, and vegetables to timber and paper. We also cannot overlook industrial agriculture and fermentation, which rely on fungi. Bread, beer, wine, mold-ripened cheeses, and yogurt, with yeast and mold, would not exist. In laboratories, fungi provide enzymes, antibiotics, hormones, and vitamins. Without them, modern medicine would look completely different. Life-saving drugs like penicillin or cyclosporine, as well as advanced immunotherapies, would be impossible without fungi. Furthermore, fungi play a major role in environmental purification. Without their ability to break down toxins, pesticides, or plastics, pollutants would accumulate in soil and water, making many ecosystems uninhabitable. Their role in filtering air, soil, and water is subtle, almost invisible, but absolutely fundamental to our survival. In short, humans could survive only to a very limited extent and only in select ecologically fortunate areas without fungi. Their absence would mean decreased biodiversity, soil degradation, drastically reduced food availability, loss of many medicines, and the gradual deterioration of the natural environment. In other words, without fungi, our civilization and life as we know it would be practically impossible.